Hi everybody, in this video we are given the area and we need to figure out the radius, diameter, and circumference. So let's get started. The area of a circle is 530.66 square centimeters. Remember, area is two-dimensional, so it's always measured in square centimeters or square inches or square whatever. Okay, so that's the space inside of this circle over here. Calculate the radius, diameter, and circumference, use 3.14 for pi, and show your work. So if I want to know the radius and I know the area, I can use A equals pi r squared. Okay, so let's do that. We'll write A equals pi r squared over here. We know the area, so let's plug that in for A. The area is 530.66, and that is equal to pi r squared. We don't know r, so we're not plugging anything in for r right now. Actually, we are going to be using 3.14 for pi, so let me erase that and put 3.14 in instead. Sorry if that looks kind of smushed. Let me do that over. Okay, so now we need to get the r by itself. Now we have two numbers on the same side of the equal sign as r. We have this 2 over here, the exponent of 2, and we also have the pi, 3.14. What we're going to do to get the r by itself as our first step is we're going to divide both sides by pi, or 3.14 in this case, since that's what we're using for pi. They cancel over here. We still have r to the second power. Don't forget to write that exponent over there. We will deal with that later. Right now, let's just go ahead to the calculator and do 530.66 divided by 3.14, and we will get 169. So we have 169 equals r squared. So we're not done. We didn't figure out what r is yet. We figured out what r to the second power is. We know that r to the second power is 169. That's not the same thing as saying that r itself is 169. So this means that r times itself is equal to 169. So we need to think of a number that when we multiply it with itself, which is what squaring a number means, we get 169. So what number would that be? What about 10? Is 10 times 10 equal to 169? No. 10 times 10 is 100, right? What about 11? Is 11 times 11 equal to 169? No. So the number which, when we multiply it with itself, is equal to 169 is actually 13. 13 times 13 is 169. Now, I'm going to show you a symbol over here. This is called the square root symbol. And I'm going to take the square root of both sides. What does that mean? When we take the square root of 169, it means what number multiplied with itself gives us 169. And we already said that number is 13. Okay, now what is the square root of r squared? So that means what number times itself is equal to r to the second power? Well, that would just be r. R times itself is equal to r to the second power. Okay, so the square root symbol and the exponent of 2 sort of cancel each other out here. And that's why whenever we see something raised to the second power and we want to get rid of that exponent, we would take the square root. Okay, but we have to do it on the other side as well, which is why we also took the square root of 169. Okay, so the radius we just figured out is equal to 13 centimeters, not centimeters to the second power. That's for area, because area is two-dimensional. Radius is just one-dimensional. All right, so now now we want to find the diameter. What is our strategy? If we know the area, what's our strategy for finding the diameter? Well, again, there is no equation with A and D in it. So we have to follow this road to find the radius, and then we have to follow this road to get the diameter. So our strategy, if we know the area, we can find the diameter by first using A equals pi r squared to find the radius, which we already just did, and then multiplying by 2. So let's take that radius and multiply it by 2. Here's the work that we're going to show, which is very simple. 13 times 2 equals 26. So the diameter is 26 centimeters. Okay, so over here in this circle, if the area is 530.66 square centimeters, then the radius would be 13 centimeters. And let's go with yellow. And the diameter would be 26 centimeters. Okay, that makes sense that the diameter is twice as long as the radius. Okay, now, how are we going to find the circumference? And we're going to do that in terms of pi and then without pi. So going back over here, there is no direct link from area to circumference, so we're going to have to use A equals pi r squared to get the radius, which we already did, and then knowing the radius, we can use C equals 2 pi r to find the circumference. Now we could also multiply by 2 to find the diameter, and then you could use C equals pi d to find the circumference. That would also work. But I'm just going to scroll down to what I wrote here, which is use this first, which we already did, to find the radius, and I'm sorry, that's diameter. So use this first, which we already did, and then use C equals 2 pi r to get the circumference. So I'm going to do that. C equals 2 pi r. Now, we do not know the circumference. We know the radius is 13 centimeters. So let's plug that in for r. So we have now C equals 2 times pi times 13. And we can go ahead and just do 2 times 13 first, which is 26, and then keep the pi in there. So this is actually very similar to what we would have done if we had taken this route over here. We would have multiplied by 2 and then used C equals pi d. Well, over here, you can see we did take the 13, which was the radius, and multiply it by 2, and we got 26. And then if we had been using C equals pi d, that 26 would have been the diameter, right, after multiplying by 2. And then we could do C equals pi times 26, which is the same thing as C equals 26 pi. So really, it's pretty much the same thing using this equation, or just multiplying by 2 and then using C equals pi d. All right, so that is our circumference in terms of pi, with the pi still in there, and that would be centimeters. And without pi, we would just do 26 times pi, which is, we're using 3.14 as our approximation for pi. So 26 times 3.14 will give us 81.64. So let's write 81.64 centimeters as our final answer for circumference. Okay, so all the way around the circle, it would be a length of 81.64 centimeters. Okay, what I'm going to do now is another problem with area, where we're given the area and we have to find the radius, diameter, and circumference, except this time the area is going to be given to us in terms of pi. So we can see that that pi symbol is already in there. And actually that makes it easier. Even though it looks a little bit messier, it actually makes it easier. So let's go ahead and use our strategy for finding the radius. If we're given the circumference, we'll use a equals pi r squared. We're going to plug 225 pi in for a because that's the area. And don't forget that if the area is given to you in terms of pi, then you need to leave the pi in there when you're plugging it in. So we have 225 pi equals pi r squared. Now at this step, we would go ahead and divide. I'm not going to change colors. We'll go ahead, and to get the r by itself, we need to get rid of this, and then we need to get rid of this. Let's get rid of the pi first by just dividing both sides by pi. The pi's here cancel. That was the whole point of doing that. And notice that since we have a pi in the numerator, the pi's would also cancel over here. That's why it's actually a little bit easier to do these problems when the area is given to us in terms of pi, because then it cancels out very easily in this first step. And now we have r to the second power equals 225. So that means some number times itself is equal to 225. That would be 15. So we could take the square root. If you don't know it off the top of your head, then just take the square root of both sides. These cancel out, we just get r. And then, if you don't believe me, you can go to a calculator, or if you just don't know what the number is that multiplied with itself gives us this number over here, you can take that number and then in your calculator, hit the square root symbol. On some calculators it's different. Some calculators you have to hit the square root symbol first and then type the number in. This one I'm typing the number in and then hitting the square root symbol. So the square root of 225 is 15, which simply means that 15 times 15 is 225. Okay, that's all it means. So we'll write 15 over here. So if r to the second power is equal to 225, then r must be 15. So the radius is 15 meters, not square meters. Okay. To find the diameter, first use this, we did that, and then multiply by 2. So 15, here's the work that we're showing. 15 times 2 is 30. So the diameter would be 30 meters. And finally, if we want to know the circumference, then use this equation first to find the radius, which we already did. And then once we know the radius, we can use c equals 2 pi r to find the circumference. We don't know the circumference, so we're leaving that as a c. We do know the radius. We figured that out. It was 15. So now I can just go ahead and do 2 times 15, which is 30, and leave the pi there. So the circumference in terms of pi is 30 pi meters. The circumference without pi, all we're going to do is take 30 and multiply it with pi. We will use 3.14 for pi. And we'll get 94.2. I don't know why I keep writing all of these things twice. You don't have to write it twice if you don't want to in your work, but you do have to show all of the work. Okay, maybe instead of writing it here, you could just write it here instead of doing it in both places. But anyway, definitely show the work though. All right, that would be meters. Took me a long time to write that M. All right, so just to remind everybody, the radius here would be 15 meters. The diameter would be 30 meters. Let's go with green. And let's go a little bit thicker for the circumference. That would be 94.2 meters. Okay, so that's everything, and I'll end the video there. Have a great day.